KATC Weather Lab. Here's Eric's forecast.
It was another nice day with plenty of sunshine. Temperatures a little bit on the hot side as we made our way into the low 90s, but the humidity wasn't all that bad. We feel like temperatures getting to right near the triple digits, but it does look like we continue to turn up the heat for the week ahead. Highs could be pushing 96, 97 degrees by Wednesday, Thursday afternoon. So summer looks like it'll be hanging on a little bit longer for us here in Acadiana. So taking a look at the satellite and radar picture, we can see thanks to a northerly breeze that helped to bring down some drier air, keeping the clouds away for a better part of the day. Still had some of those puffy cumulus clouds out there, and we had a few showers did make their way into lower St. Martin and St. Mary Parish this afternoon. Still continuing into this evening, but I would say rain chances will be going down for the rest of this evening. Most of us should have a quiet night, and once the sun goes down, temperatures should begin to cool nicely, dropping down into the mid to low 70s by tomorrow morning. Now, the little bit of moisture we did have along the coast was all thanks to this area of low pressure now to the northwest of the Yucatan Peninsula, starting to get a little bit organized. You can see on the enhanced satellite a little bit more of those darker shades with the purple showing up earlier this afternoon, now beginning the weekend. But due to that flare up today, the National Hurricane Center has increased it to a 70% chance of maybe becoming a tropical depression over the next couple of days as it slowly drifts off to the southwest and heads towards the east coast of Mexico by about Thursday. But after that point, I think it's going to run out of time, and this should stay to the south, so no concern for us here locally in South Louisiana. The big story, though, continues to be Hurricane Dorian. Still an extremely powerful system, no longer a Category 5, but still an extremely powerful Category 4 storm with winds just below 150 miles per hour. Pretty much battering the Grand Bahama Island for the last 12 to 24 hours are now causing intense storm surge, 18 to 23 feet. The island has basically become a part of the ocean now with all the water that has inundated a large portion of the island. But you do see over the last couple frames, the eye is beginning to lift to the north and away from the islands, which is good news, but you can still see on the wraparound backside, those heavy winds continue to batter a good portion of the island. But with that northerly track, maybe the worst of it stays away from Florida. As you can see, the eastern side of the storm is the worst side of the storm, and if we can keep that over the ocean, maybe the worst conditions will not get over into Florida, and that is some good news. On the radar, you can see it's a very tight, compact storm, only about 50, 60 miles wide as far as the hurricane strength winds outside of the center, and that's where the worst of the rains continue to be located. But unfortunately, that is pretty much right over top the island of the Grand Bahama. That's why they've been dealing with just horrendous conditions for the last 12 hours or so. Still 100 miles off the east coast of Florida. Some outer bands have been able to work their way across the peninsula this afternoon, bringing some gusty winds, 40, 60 mile an hour in some of those bands, and some heavy downpours. But for the better part, not terrible today across the Florida peninsula. And if that track continues, we do think this might stay just offshore and it won't be too bad for Florida. So here's the current conditions. 145 mile per hour winds, gust to 170, makes it a Category 4 storm, but a very strong end Category 4 at that. Nearly stationary, but we do believe it is starting to turn a little bit to the northwest, which is some good news. And here's the latest track as of 4 p.m. Relatively stationary through tonight and into tomorrow morning, not moving a whole lot, maybe beginning to make that jog to the north, but it does look like it should stay off the east coast of Florida. Even by Wednesday morning, still a Category 3 with winds up to about 125 miles per hour. Through Wednesday and into the first half of Thursday, it'll track up the Georgia coast and into the Carolinas, remaining offshore. So that is the good news. The eye and the worst of it should remain out over the Atlantic, but still a Category 2 storm. Winds over 100 miles per hour as of Thursday afternoon. Will brush by the outer banks of North Carolina late Thursday and into Friday before eventually beginning the weekend as it moves over some cooler waters in the North Atlantic and eventually dropping down to a tropical low as it heads towards the Nova Scotia area by next weekend. Here's a look at the tropical form storm winds and just how far they'll extend out from the center. These are winds 35 miles an hour or greater, and you can see mainly out over the waters, but eventually we still have about a 50% chance right along the Gulf Coast. But quickly you can see those bars, they downgrade fast, so not a large portion of the Florida will see that bad of winds with this system. Even through Georgia and the Carolinas, it's mainly going to be right along the coast. That's where they're going to see the worst of the conditions, but quickly it downgrades the farther inland you get. So that is the good news. Other than again, those right along the coast shouldn't be too bad of a system for many of those on the east coast and even into the northeast. Most of it stays out over the water. But with all those winds wrapping around the north side, storm surge looks to be the biggest concern as it moves up the east coast. We're talking 4 to 8 feet for some of those barrier islands along Florida, just to the east of Orlando. That continues up towards the Jacksonville area. These numbers now looking to be coming down a little bit. That's because it thinks it's speeding up. Still, though, could see anywhere from 8 to maybe 13 feet right along the Gulf Coast, and that could extend inland from some of those inland juts all the way to the Interstate 95 through the northern portions of Florida and up into Georgia towards the Savannah area, even into South Carolina towards Charleston. We're talking some decent storm surge of anywhere from 7 to 12 feet right along the Gulf Coast, but quickly not moving too far inland, and even by Myrtle Beach and up into North Carolina, not talking that bad, maybe 3 to 6 feet of storm surge. So hurricane warnings for pretty much the entire coast of Florida, and then watches beyond that with tropical storm warnings and watches for many of the inland locations of the Florida Peninsula over the coming days as Dorian continues to track to the north. But what we are starting to watch, and the encouraging sign, is our big area of high pressure over the Rocky Mountains is starting to bring down some of this drier air. This is that trough we've been waiting for, and that should help to turn Dorian to the north, keep it off the east coast, and eventually should prevent us from seeing too bad. And with this drier air moving in, that's going to bring us the sunshine and hot conditions for the week ahead. So some clouds out there for our Monday night. Otherwise, near normal temperatures getting down into the mid to low 70s for our Tuesday. Wall-to-wall sunshine and getting hot. 94 is what I'll go with for the high, and those temperatures just continue to get hotter as the week goes on. 96, 97 Wednesday through next Saturday. Good news is humidity looks to remain in check, but still with all that heat and sunshine, you're going to want to try and cool off and make sure you drink the water if you do work outside this week. Clouds and a slight chance for some showers return as we move into the following week, which might bring temperatures down a little bit, but still looking very summer-like over the next